I'd like to call the January 8th, 2020 meeting of the Plymouth Board of Education to order at 7:01 p.m. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion on the agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Approval of the minutes of the previous meeting? I entertain a motion to accept them. Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent. All right. This brings us to item number 4, presentation. The superintendent is going to do a presentation on his proposed budget for the 2020 to 2021 fiscal year.
Yep, and I'm going to come up to the podium to do that.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, everybody. So, board members have had the budget presentation for a bit, a chance to review it and process it a little bit. So, for sake of time, because this tends to be a little bit of a longer presentation, I'm not going to go through every slide. For people who are here, I know folks who are in the audience who have a copy. So we'll be jumping over some of those slides as we go. For people who are at home, I know that our presentation is online on our website, so if you want to see the entire presentation, it's there for your review. So tonight what I plan on doing is talking to you about our 2020-2021 budget presentation. And obviously it's not just created by me, the team of administrators all working with their staff back at their schools. Folks like Lindsay and Jen and Rich are a big part of the development of the process as well. And of course, Mr. Hendrickson, our business manager, is a big part of trying to pull this together. So this is obviously a team effort. We're excited about being able to talk to you about a few major topics. We want to talk to you about essentially where the major components of our budget are. We want to talk to you about a number of the successes we've had in this district, which is absolutely connected to budget, because that's one of our major documents. We're going to talk about some of our challenges as well, and then talk to you about some of the needs that we have going into next year. One of the things I think it's important for everybody to pay attention to is going into next year, the teaching staff, as approved by the contract, does get a full step. And over the last couple of years, they've gotten a half a step and a half a step, and this is going to be a full step. So that ends up being a decent amount of money that gets added to the budget in order to pay for that. But our teachers in this district have been stuck on steps for many years. We actually have teachers who have been here for 12 years and on step 5, something like that. So in order to make sure we keep our teachers and we attract other teachers who are of quality, we want to make sure that we continue to be competitive with our rates. So I think that's important to note. So I'm going to go through some of these slides at the beginning, especially quickly, because you've seen a lot of these slides before. So I do want to start on this particular slide, the budget component slide. What I think is interesting about this thing is we all know that education is about people working with kids. Education is a very person-heavy industry. We can't automate. We need people working with kids. So when you look at what our budget components are, you see that 75% of our budget is associated with people. It's 58.8% salaries, 17.8% benefits, and then if you add all the other stuff that we really don't have control over, you have transportation at 7.4%, oil, gas, and electricity at 2.3%. We actually have about 13% for everything else. Everything else ends up being anything from toilet paper to Chromebooks to paper to textbooks. There's a lot of other things that go into that everything else. But a lot of the budget is always spoken for at the beginning of the process. So it's important to note that. Our primary budget drivers for this year, you see, are certified salaries, non-certified salaries, special education, transportation, benefits, transportation, electricity. It's actually about $700,000 of our $752,000 increase is all contractual responsibilities. These are things that we've entered into contracts with either the Board of Education, with the teachers, all these contracts you've seen, bus contracts, the special education bus contract. These are all contractual obligations that we have. When we did have the ability to cut things in the all other, we were able to find a little over $100,000 that we could find reductions in. And we did our best to cut as much as we could, knowing that our contractual obligations were pretty high this year. So just kind of let that sink in a little bit. About $700,000 are contractual obligations. There are about $100,000 we're going to talk about of new staff spending that we think is very appropriate, and we go into this year. But we're looking for a $752,000 increase, which is a little over 3%. That is what we're coming in with as an increase. You've seen this slide before if you've been on the board for a while. The net current expenditure per pupil. Just as a reminder for everyone, this is the state's way of showing the apples-to-apples comparison from all other districts in the state of Connecticut. When you compare all the same line items and you add them all up and you divide by the number of kids, you get an apples-to-apples comparison. So you see Plymouth is way down at the bottom of our DIRG. And just for, remember, DIRGs are our district reference group. They're supposed to be towns that are all similar to us economically. So we are way in that far right corner, spending one of the least amount of dollars in our DIRG. The green is what the average of the DIRG is, and the red is actually the state average. So you can see, like, the state, on average, are spending $3,300 more per child. Just think about that. Per every child, 3 of them there, $9,900 more. The state average would be, we should be spending $9,900 more just on them. And so we're definitely on the low end on this spectrum, which in many ways is a very good thing. It shows that we're efficient. But also I think it shows that we are not resource heavy. You're going to see this slide twice tonight, our budget priorities. We want to keep the elementary class sizes manageable. We believe as we continue to look at our data, we need to make sure that at Fisher Elementary School that we're providing enough support to reduce or close the achievement gap. You're also going to see some data that shows that we have a significant more number of students in crisis over the past few years, and we need an additional 0.4 social worker to help with that. And we also do continue to have some larger class sizes at Eli Terry, and we believe a academic tutor would be supportive of helping out with those larger class sizes, especially for the next couple of years while we have the larger class sizes move out. So I want to get into some of the really positive things. I think it's important to talk about how the money is actually resulting in outcomes. And starting with the 4-year graduation rate, I think it's important. Terrigal High School is hovering around mid-80s to upper 80s in terms of 4-year graduation rate. And over the past couple of years, because of a concerted effort by the faculty, they've gotten into that 92.7% and 92.3% 4-year graduation rate, meaning that you started as a freshman and you finish in 4 years. Keep in mind, this also includes kids who may have moved in from another town, say halfway through their sophomore year, and then maybe left us and dropped out of school. They would actually be considered our dropout. So those are all built into that 92.7, some things that the high school staff would have had very little control over with those children. But I think it's very positive to see our graduation rate at that level. I think it's also important, I'm just going to go through these quickly. These next slides show all of the colleges from 16 through 19 where our students were admitted. So I'm obviously not going to stop and read a bunch of them just for sake of time. But you see that our kids get into a lot of colleges. They may not choose to go to them for whatever reason that is, but they are getting accepted into these colleges. So it shows that if students are applying themselves and putting forth the effort, they can go to a number of different colleges if that's their choice. Not all kids are going to go to college, and a lot of kids tend to stay at home in state colleges and go to either a Central or a UConn. Again, that's all their own personal choice that they'd like to make. So moving on, I think another really important accomplishment is our AP work, especially at the high school. Well, obviously at the high school. You know that we were recognized by the College Board, put on the 10th annual AP list, and that's being recognized for significant increase in the number of students taking AP courses at Terryville High School and keeping their scores at least where they were. So you don't have like this large increase of students and like this giant drop of scores. You actually have to at least keep your scores. And if you look at the bottom right-hand number here, we haven't just kept the scores, they've actually been increasing. So 63.3% of our students got a 3 or higher on an exam. So, and we've now gone from offering 7 courses to 9, and if I'm not mistaken, we're offering AP Spanish going into 1920. So that's a legitimate 5-year Spanish program now, starting in 8th grade and going all the way through your senior year. And for those children or students who really want to master a language, we're offering them something. And we can't offer 4 or 5 languages, but at least we can offer something like Spanish. So again, a significant accomplishment. SBAC scores, since 14-15, our math has gone up 17 points, and our English language arts has gone up 14 points. So we see this rise in our scores over time. Those are district scores that we're talking about. So that's something very positive. You've seen this slide before, and I apologize, it is small. But when you look at our English state scores, the Smarter Balance scores, compared to our DIRG, you see that back in 2014-15, we were in 14th place, if you will, against all the other similar towns, and we've gone up 7 spaces. And this is while other towns have also been increasing their scores. So not only have we increased our scores, we've increased our scores at a higher rate than these other towns. So I think that's very notable. We'll never be happy until we're number 1, because we want to see our students do as best as they can, but I think it's notable to see that. So we've moved up 7 spaces in English. In math, we started at the 10th spot, and we're now in the 5th spot in math. And again, some of these scores are kind of tight. You see Griswold is right there. There's a lot of 50s at that point. So some definite accomplishments there. Another thing we pay attention to is how are we doing against our surrounding towns? And I want to note that on the far right side, you see the DIRGs. Just for people who are not as familiar with this, if you're in DIRG A, you're in what's considered the wealthiest towns in Connecticut. And if you're in DIRG I, you're in our poorest towns. So like your cities will be I, your places like, as you can imagine, the so-called Gold Coast would have a number of the A's. Not all of them are A's. So we in Plymouth are considered DIRG F. And so you can see in English, our score is 6 points higher than Thomaston, a few more than that over Bristol. We're closing in on Watertown in terms of our scores in English. In math, we actually are outperforming the students in Watertown, a DIRG D, and we're closing in on Southington. It's still enough space to get there, and we're clearly outperforming the students in Thomaston and Bristol. So we put that out there. I'm sorry, I'm laughing right now at Miss Kalesa. I know she's a teacher in Bristol, and I always feel a little... But Interestingly enough, when you look at scores across the state, and this is just a reality in the state of Connecticut, if you live in a Durg A town, your scores are generally higher than Durg B, generally higher than Durg C. It just kind of like steps all the way down. But I can tell you, I went back and looked, we're outperforming about 25% of the towns in Durg D. So our scores are beating a number of towns well above us in our Durgs. And for me, no matter which town you're born in, you should get a quality education and you should be able to succeed and do what you want. Education is supposed to be that like great equalizer. So, you know, it's nice to see, though, that we are outperforming towns that are right around us, because when people look for homes, they do look at education. They want to make sure that their kids are going to get a quality education where they live. All that, and we are spending, we're the 152nd out of 166 in terms of spending. We're at the bottom 10%. We spend less than 90% of all the towns in Connecticut. So, you know, we're in this, again, that's a good story because we're efficient, but that does also mean we're lacking some resources in our minds. And that's what this slide talks about a little bit. This one talks about being effective and efficient. We're 5.1 and 5.8% over the state average with these Smarter Balance scores. And like I said, we ranked number 7 and 5th against our DERG, and we're 15th in spending in our DERG. So I really do believe as a Board of Education and as an administration, we've been trying to be as efficient as possible. My wife will tell you that I'm very frugal, and you can't really knock the frugal out of me when I'm at work. I'm very conservative when it comes to spending money. I think you need to make sure you are aware of every dollar that's being spent and how it's being spent. So we do that here, and the board does that here as well. We also try to focus on ongoing efficiencies. So the board's been doing, we commissioned NESDEC to do a facility study for us to see how we could best use our facilities in the future. I know the board chair will make some comments about that in a meeting we had last evening, later on in the night. We moved to the state 2.0 plan. That was a concerted effort. We were looking at 20% increases in insurance if we stayed with our self-insurance plan, and now we're in the 8% range. Still an increase, but it's not the 20% increase we're looking at. Our food service program's operating in the black. They are making money. So that's much better than what we were actually kicking out checks to our former vendor for about 60 grand each year, and now we're positive. Technology department supports our town. They were a big part of bringing the town back online when there was the cyber attack. Rich, I think, slept over at Town Hall, if I can remember, helping them come back online. Rich is, I say this in a loving way, Rich is extremely paranoid about cyber attacks, so I love that about him. But it's just not, anyways, Rich and I joke all the time about that, but he is an excellent person to have on our side. We're switching to the same business software that the town switched to last year, so our business platforms will be both the same, making it easy for the two business managers, anybody else, to really pay attention to the money. And we did win a security grant last year. We've been doing upgrades throughout. All right, challenges, though. 4 out of every 10 students that we work with are in the poverty range. Last year alone, 122 calls had to be made to DCF, 911, or 211. Majority of those 122 being at 3 of our schools. Not that the 4th school didn't have any, but the bigger majority was at 3 of our schools. Significant number of our students need Tier 2 and Tier 3 support. I could do a whole presentation on what Tier 2 and Tier 3 means, but it's additional support beyond just this classroom instruction that's provided for students who are falling behind. And then, as you all know, budgeting for special education, one of the most challenging things to do, because we're asking Ms. Ehrenheim to predict what next year will cost now, and we know that kids move in and out of town, and some of them can come with some hefty price tags, either leaving or coming in. So we always budget based on what we know now. We never say, well, we'll gain 3 kids. We never add money to it, so we're basing off of what we know now. The only money we add is usually the expected increases in what we're going to be charged next year for the same facilities. So it could be a 3 to 5% increase. Inflation, they tend to increase that. So special education is a challenge for us. But I will say we've been very good about keeping our special ed increases to small percentages, but it's of a big dollar amount, so it tends to be a overall big dollar amount. So 43% of our kids are receiving free or reduced lunch. So it seems like the increased need is our new norm. If you know what CPI is, it's inflation. If you look at 11-12, our budget and inflation was about the same place. But if you look at that line now, you see that we now have less purchasing power with our budget than we did back in 11-12. I know people often, when they talk about receiving raises, they want to at least try to, not that they always do, but at least try to keep up with inflation so that their salaries try to keep up with the cost of goods that are going up. But when you look at that, you see that break of those 2 graphs. You see that we're not even keeping up with the cost of goods. So as paper is increased, we don't have as much money to pay for it. As other things have increased, our purchasing power has not increased. So for those who say we're overspending, we're not even keeping up with inflation, especially since 11-12. So I told you we were going to look at this again. We want to keep the elementary class sizes at a manageable level. In terms of providing needed academic support to Fisher, been looking at the data, we look at the students, how they're doing on their results, and we believe that we need to add a math coach, and I'll talk more about that, and we'll talk more about that at our workshops as well, a math coach and an academic tutor. To deal with some of this upgraded crises that we're seeing, the number of crises that we're dealing with students in need, we believe we need to add at least 1 day of a social worker to both the middle school and the high school. So we need a .4 social worker. And we do think we need that tutor at Eli Terry for at least a couple of years. So to keep class sizes manageable, the left side is our current sections at Fisher. So you see about between 15 and 20 students per class, 18 sections. And what we're projecting is to keep 3 sections at each grade level. And again, it would be about 15 to 20 students per class. We are expecting a larger kindergarten class next year than we had this year. NESDEC had predicted our little dip this year in kindergarten, and now they predict, based on births, that our kindergarten population will be back up next year. So they're predicting 98 kindergarten students next year. At Plymouth Center, you see that we have 13 sections this year, and we project that we should have 13 sections next year. And the class sizes would be between 14 and 23. And so 3rd grade would be your larger classes over there at 23. Manageable. And we've certainly had 23s, 24s, 25s, even 26s we've had in this district, depending on some of the larger classes. So usually this slide is populated with something, notable new equipment items. It was notable that we have no new notable equipment items. We're not adding anything this year that's over $4,000. So just jump over that. The staffing changes, those are the values that we have in our budget for the math coach, the social worker, and those 2 tutors. Why is there a difference between the 2 tutor costs? Because the tutor at Fisher is 140 days. The tutor at Eli would be 180 days. The reason why that happens is because the tutor at Eli would be going in there to help with the larger class sizes. So they would be needed right from the beginning, where with all of our other academic tutors do 140 days because we don't need them or during certain times of the year. first couple of weeks of school, not really going to bring in your academic tutors. The last couple of weeks of school, not going to be needed. Right before vacations and some other strategic times, we've been able to keep the cost down by making sure they're working when we know they'll be needed. So that's why there's a difference in cost there. So when we do the workshops, the individual folks, like in this case, Ms. Loveland will be able to speak to this particular request even more so than I will. But in working with her, these are the points, some of the bigger points that are going to be made. 1/3 of all of our regular education, Fisher students need additional support to reduce the achievement gap. So the coach will do those functions just like our other coaches currently do. So they help make sure that our teachers in the classrooms are actually implementing the curriculum as it's expected, and our teachers want that and need that, and they do the other work of the bullets that are there. The social worker, like I said, we're seeing a lot of need. We're seeing a lot of need, and our social workers, I won't say especially, but I know our social worker at the high school, middle school, she has to bop back and forth between the middle school and the high school because it's one social worker for both schools. That's a lot, and you can never predict when a student's going to go into crisis, and so that's why we believe we really need that. You see the calls even tripled at Eli Terry from 17-18 to 18-19. In some respect, that's partially because I think, and from listening anecdotally, we're more on top of our students in crisis. So we're able to really see when issues are happening, where some of them maybe in the past had gone unnoticed. And so the fact that we see them now, we're aware of them, we're able to do stuff about them. But that's why we're making that request for the Point Four social worker. A number of our special ed students are in a STAR program, which is our behavioral program. They need that additional support from a social worker. And we want to be proactive. Not to take a firefighting pun or anything like that, but we don't want to just fight the fires. We want to be able to stop the fires before they happen. We want to be proactive with students, and that's important. The tutor over at Fisher, similar reasoning, but also when we looked at the tutor situation, Plymouth Center actually currently has more tutors per children than Fisher does. And when you look at the results that we've been getting, that doesn't make a lot of sense. We should at least be trying to get closer to equal there. So that's the ratio when we add the tutor. So it would be, when we add this position, if we are fortunate to add it, the ratio would then be 56 students per tutor. Right now, obviously, it's higher. And over at Plymouth Center, it's 42 students per tutor. Not every student needs to have tutor intervention, but just as an easy way to break that down. And then what's, I think, really interesting to note, at Fisher, 56% of the current fifth graders started at Fisher. So that means 44% of them came from somewhere else along the way. That doesn't make them any less of a student or anything like that. It just means it shows that our kids can be very transient, especially over in the Fisher area. So you could have a child move in, move out, and they could come back. We tend to see them moving around quite a bit. That's never very good for a child's education because they have to fit back into the school. They have to feel comfortable again. It's not an easy thing. And so that's part of what's causing the gaps to occur as well. Yep.
Population of the fifth graders came from somewhere else, not from town?
Yeah, they didn't start with us. They didn't start with us in kindergarten. So 56% of them started with us in kindergarten and have gone through, and they're currently fifth graders.
Okay, well, they could have came in at second grade or third grade. Or
That would be the 44%.
44.
Yeah, right. They came in sometime after kindergarten. And like I said, some of them, we get a report every week, and it shows the ins and outs of our students. And you do see, unfortunately, kids' names pop off, and then sometimes they pop back on, and they might have moved to Bristol, and then they move back. Anyways, Eli Terry, we're looking for the tutor, like I mentioned. We just have some larger classes there, and Ms. Suffrage has been requesting that we try to provide some additional hands to our teachers there. So the larger class sizes would be supported. If students needed to get a separate testing site, it would be allowed to. That would be helpful there. Students who are working in a non-supported, like non-coached, non-co-teacher classroom, they can provide an extra supportive hands to help with the reading and writing. So it's at a small cost trying to help support our teachers who are dealing with some larger classes. But those kids are moving through. The 8th grade class is big this year, so it's going to provide a little support next year. The expenditures, what I think is interesting about this is a 5-year look at how numbers have increased. You don't see huge increases. At each of the schools, most of those increases are from salaries because you have all those teachers there, they're getting that step, so you're going to see an increase there. Special education is well within boundaries of justifiable increases. Benefits actually came down this year and are looking to go up a little bit next year. And the transportation, we have an increase in special education transportation, and Ms. Ehrenheim will be able to talk about that more during workshop or if there's questions tonight. But you see the all other is being held pretty constant. Historically, we have not been high in our increases. Back in the good old days of 06, 07, 08, there was 3% type increases. Then it came way down for a while, and that's been jagged. Last year, we had a bigger increase because the state even said, you guys just aren't spending enough. You're not meeting the requirement. So the town was required. We keep telling people that we're not being funded at the right level. But the state they make it very difficult. And if you ask Paula or I to calculate the minimum budget requirement for next year, we can't do it. We wouldn't be able to calculate our exact minimum budget requirement right now. We've called the state on this, and Paul will keep reaching out and trying to figure out what that would be. But it's like this after-the-fact kind of situation. And it's not really fair to us as a board or to the town, but last year it became obvious. And it was even the year before that. There was that whole, we should have gotten a letter kind of thing from the state, which was mind-boggling. But so here's our request, as you saw at the beginning: a $752,000 increase, 3.071%. And I really did want to make sure I stress this particular slide, this pie chart. This shows this current year how all the money is being expended. And I think it's important for people to understand this slide. So that purple wedge, that is the excess cost sharing grant that we get from the state, plus our excess cost reimbursement that we get from the state. So that is a chunk of money, about $10 million. And that money comes from the state, and it's a way that the state tries to make education as equal as they can. So they're taking money from wealthier towns and redistributing it disproportionately back to poorer towns. So for example, a town like New Canaan gets $362,000 in ECS, where we get $9.8 million. So you can see that the state is disproportionately giving it back. New Canaan, you know that their tax rates and what their tax bills are for property taxes high when you think about their median house costs and all that kind of stuff. So they get very little of that back in their ECS grant. It goes off to the state, and then they still have to come up with all their budget for their education. We get $10 million. As another example, Hartford gets $205 million. So you take your cities like that, they get a huge chunk of money. Again, to try to equalize education. So when people talk about how the Board of Education spends the lion's share of the town's budget, it's not actually true. Because that purple wedge is not your local tax property. There may be some tax dollars that we send to the state that come back to us, but you can tell that there'd be other towns that are really contributing a lot more to us. So in essence, when you look at the local tax dollars going to the Board of Education, that's that, call it orangish wedge. It's 34% of the overall budget, where the town government is 39%. When you add in capitals, it's 41%. So this slide seems to contradict this idea that we're spending all the local taxpayer dollars, because we get so much of it from the state, almost not quite half. So we end up spending about 45% of the local tax dollars. I know you might say it says 34% there, but if you take out the purple wedge completely and you just take what's left, we end up spending about 45% of the local tax dollars. It's not the lion's share. It's the minority portion. And it's because we end up being a more distressed town that we get this I'll call it a windfall from the state. Unfortunately, they can give it and they can take it away, and we saw that in 17-18. So we're kind of beholden. The wealthier towns, some of them are like, you know what, keep your ECS money because stay out of our local affairs. We don't need your $300,000. They'll still take it, of course, but I think this slide is important for people to try to understand. And if you're talking to other people, you need to say that purple is a big check that's coming to the town. It goes through the town comptroller. We, of course, spend it, but it's not collected through local tax dollars. I'm sorry if I'm spending too much time on that, but I think it's important to note.
So is it safe to say that you were, with the proposed budget, the actual money from the town after the reimbursement, the budget we're operating at roughly $15 million?
Yeah, roughly, yep. And I've said that in the past to people, and I've tried to make that clear to people, that local tax dollar spending is that part of it.
So the taxpayers are contributing $15 million.
Right. And the only point that I'll put like a little asterisk on, there's probably at least $1 from local taxpayer dollar that's in that purple somewhere. I'm not enough of a tax person to know if there's not one single dollar that's in that purple thing. Just full disclosure. But that is coming from the state. And people will say, well, my tax dollars go to the state. Yeah, when you buy soda or when you buy whatever you buy and it's taxed at the 6.35%, that goes to the state. And, yep, your tax dollars go to that. But the property taxes that we deal with typically help pay for all the things you need in a town. And unfortunately, and I know the mayor's working hard at this and has done good work, we just don't have the businesses. The grand list doesn't grow at this immense rate, which can help bring down some of your local taxes on local properties. So unfortunately, the property owner ends up paying, for all the services that are needed in town. So just be aware of that particular wedge. And then so in summary, I think that as a board, as administration, we've been very effective and efficient. We spend less than 90% of the other towns in Connecticut per student. We've made some really good gains in AP. We've made some really good gains on our achievement scores. We've got a lot of good things going on for our kids. But we have a lot of remaining need, and we do need additional support so we don't start to go downhill. We have acute mental health issues and behavioral concerns. I think that's rising over the state of Connecticut and nationally. And like I said, without the additional support, we would see ourselves starting to break down. So we're not asking for a tremendous amount of added to this budget, but there are a lot of contractual obligations that are in there. So the last slide here is about the budget workshops. We usually will meet we're scheduled to meet on January 15th from 6 to 8 in the library, and we go line by line. We answer any questions that the board members have. We have our administrators, especially around our new requests there to answer questions. We do a meeting on the 22nd if we still need another meeting. At the February Board of Ed meeting, you must adopt a budget. It doesn't have to be this budget I put to you tonight. You have to adopt a budget because I've got to submit something. Paul and I have to submit something by the 15th of February. Board of Finance meeting, I spoke to Mr. Kildoff today. It's going to be March 19th. And the Town Council meeting, the Tri-Board meeting, is April 20th. So they've worked with us to keep the meeting off of vacation time. So that's all good stuff. So I appreciate Mr. Kilduff. And I also want to thank Mr. Kilduff for being present. And I think Barbara Rockwell is also here.
Yep.
So I appreciate, and Danny Gentile's here also for being here, because they're obviously important parts of the budget process as well, and getting to see the budget at the ground floor. I appreciate your attendance. So with that, if there's any questions from the board now, I'd be happy to try to answer them. And if something we need to get back to or during the workshop, that's also fine. So is there anything right now?
Anyone? Superior League?
All good? Okay, I'm sorry, I was looking down at my notes and I didn't see that piece. All right, thank you.
Item number 5 on the agenda is the superintendent's update.
I know. So I'll go right from the budget presentation to a superintendent's update. You've heard enough from me, so I'll make it quick. I just want to make sure people are paying attention to the vision of the graduate stuff that I've been sending out and principals have been sending out. We've been trying to get people to get involved with a thing called Thought Exchange, where you go online and you're able to share your ideas of what you think the graduate of Terrible High School should look like. So there'll be another opportunity in my monthly update that I'll go out by the end of this week. I'll have the link again. We've had some very good interaction with the site, but I want to make sure people have a chance to put their ideas out there. So,
And they can do it multiple times.
and they can do it multiple times. The Thought Exchange program allows you to actually go in, see what other ideas are, like the ideas, dislike the ideas, put your own ideas in. So really getting in there and telling us what you think. Because on the 27th, there'll be our committee's next meeting. We're going to take all that information and say, here's what we got back from the Thought Exchange process. Later on in this year, we'll be bringing something back to the full board to have a conversation about what our committee thinks is appropriate for the vision of the graduate. So I just want to make sure people are doing this. This will be the 4th time we have sent out information to people with the links. It'll be like my first thing in the email. The other thing I want to mention is Brown Bag Lunch will be January 22nd. We do that from 12 to 1 here at the high school. We're going to talk about the budget. We can talk about the facility study. Those are the 2 major pieces that we'll be talking about. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on that? All right. Student representatives. Taylor.
All right, so we had a holiday concert the Friday before we went on break, and with that we had the staff concert, which Dr. Semmel was in. If any of you were curious, he did play the trumpet, and it was amazing. They did a fantastic job, and it was obvious how much work was put in. The chorus also did 2 songs. I'm in chorus, and I don't even remember. The band did a fantastic performance with the drum line, and the color guard also participated. It's an annual thing, and it is the best thing ever. It makes everyone so excited for break, and it really, really makes a lot of seniors like, oh my God, I have to leave. It's a really great moment. And then there is a couple of PTSA fundraisers coming up. The 16th, we have Dan LaRosa, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, the hypnotist, and he's coming to the school to, hypnotize people. The doors open at 5:30 and the show begins at 7. I think the tickets are $10 each. And then on February 8th, there's going to be the fundraiser at Krabby L's, and that is at 5 p.m. there. I'm not sure how much we get of that for the after grad, but I could figure it out. But yeah, that's all I got.
Okay, so yesterday, January 7th, the National Honor Society went to Fisher and Plymouth Center to read to kindergarten, first, and second grade students. And we also made bookmarks to give to the children after we read them all stories, and they seemed very happy about it. They were asking questions about the stories, and it was adorable, and it was a really great experience. And then the Terryville versus Thomaston games are being held this Friday, January 10th, at Thomaston High School. The boys JV will be at 3:30, girls varsity 5:15, and boys varsity 7 o'clock.
The blood drive right before Christmas break was a major success. We collected 36 pints, which is a new school record, and many teachers, because of the 2-hour delay, they actually came in early, and they did that to ensure that they could be able to donate and that the students throughout the day could donate. And the midterm exams are coming up at the end of this month.
Starting Friday, next Friday actually. If any of you are curious, when all of us are going to be miserable.
The blood drive is a wonderful thing. I hope that keeps up. That helps a lot of people.
We're having another one in February.
Excellent. Good. All right. Item number 7 on the agenda is public comment. Reminder, 3-minute per speaker. Do we have any public comment at this time? All right. With none noted, we'll move along to item number 8 on the agenda, under new business, the Board of Education meeting dates and subcommittees. So I have decided that we are going to try something different with some of our subcommittees, except the finance one that is already in place and has met. We're going to try to make the subcommittees ad hoc committees and assign them as needed. There's some advantages to this. The formality, for one, a quorum. If we don't have a quorum one month, we still have a couple people that can get some work done and move forward, and everything will come to the board, the full board, as it previously did. Any presentations or any policy changes will be presented to the full board, so everybody hears the same message at the same time, and we'll vote on that policy change, yea or nay, at that appropriate time. So under that, we'll go to item number 9, board member committee reports under finance and operations. Cindy, you want to?
The Finance and Operations Subcommittee met prior to the Board of Ed meeting tonight. The subcommittee reviewed the accounts by facilities report for the month of December. The same will be forwarded to the Town of Plymouth, the Board of Finance. The committee reviewed the personnel report.
Okay. Any questions on that from anybody? All right. B, student achievement. Do you have a presentation usually that you deliver for student achievement?
I usually have a full hour-long agenda that we discuss,
Okay.
and that meeting was not held.
Okay. All right. So get to me after, and then we'll discuss that.
Okay.
All right. All right. All right. Item number 10 on the agenda, public comment. All right. With none noted, we'll move along to item number 11, board liaison reports. Harry S. Fisher Elementary School, their meeting will be on the 21st of this month, so I will have a report in February. Plymouth Center School, Josiah, do you have anything?
They had a meeting last night. I wasn't there because I was at a Board of Ed meeting.
Okay.
They didn't.
They did not have a meeting.
No, they didn't.
Yeah,
They
okay.
actually are canceling their meeting for this month.
Okay, so February will be the next one for you. Eli Terry Junior Middle School. Cindy?
So we're getting ready for our skate night coming up on February 11th. We'll be sending flyers home to all of the schools. It is a town-wide skate night. It's nice that it's put in with Valentine's Day week. Winter sports are underway, and the T-shirts will be given away starting Thursday. They have a home game. So the cheerleaders will be giving away free T-shirts to the people that are attending. They give away about 10 T-shirts a game. We're also getting ready to put together a comedy night fundraiser. It's the comedians are coming from the Funny Bone, and we're going to be hosting it at Nucci's, and this is going to be an adult-only fundraiser, so it should be a very fun night out for families. And that's it for the middle school.
All right. We'll follow up with the Booster Club?
Yeah. So the Booster Club, we're going to have T-shirts again for those basketball games, starting with next week's games. We'll give away about 10 per game as well there. The concessions is doing very well at the basketball games, and we're going to have it during wrestling as well. We just got approval for Emily, who's a senior, and it's her birthday today, to do canvases in the gym. So she is a pretty good artist, and she's been wanting to paint a kangaroo pouch in the gym because other schools, they have like murals in their gyms and stuff like that. So she's been working really hard to get that done. So we're able to paint on a canvas to hang in the gym. So she's a senior, and that's going to be like her senior going away thing to leave in the gym. So it's really nice. That's it for the Booster Club.
That's it? All right. Terryville High School?
Terryville High School PTSA has, as Taylor mentioned, we have 2 fundraisers coming up before our next board meeting. So Thursday, January 16th, Dan LaRosa, the hypnotist, here at Terryville High School, and Saturday, February 8th at Krabby Owl's.
Kids can go to the hypnotist.
Oh, kids can go to the hypnotist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good for like anyone that's in school.
They can also go to Krabby Owl's.
Yeah.
All right. All set? Do you have anything for SEPTA?
I do. I'll do it
Okay.
all tonight.
Okay.
So, because we were working the last couple of days, so we're adding our February date. We didn't have one previously. So February 19th at 7 o'clock here at the library at the high school, Ms. Herrenheim is going to be doing our Tier 1, Tier 2 presentation. For anybody else who would like to come see it, it'll be a little bit more intimate, and they can ask a lot of questions for her. And we have a snow date of February 26th because of our winters. We are probably canceling our March date because we just found out that's the same night as our town meeting. April 23rd, we just booked Focus, 6:30 here. We're hoping for the auditorium if you've never been. It's an amazing group of young people with autism, and they talk about their lives. Out of the 16 years we've done SEPTA, we've had them 8 times. So anybody's welcome to come, and it's an amazing event. And then we are possibly looking for our May meeting to have one of our staff, Emily, who did our behavioral program about 2 years ago about behaviors and how to help parents with their techniques of helping kids with special needs with their behaviors in and out of the classroom. So we're hoping for the May meeting. I haven't gotten that confirmed yet, but there we go. This Saturday is our paint day, and we had 22 spots. Right now, 17 are gone. So if anybody wants a spot, $25. We only have 5 spots left, and they're probably going to be going by the end of this week. So either contact myself or the other Melissa. And that's it for SEPTA at this point.
Okay.
But
CABE. Not a lot of information coming out of CABE right now. They do offer a leadership institute that starts at the end of this month. They just extended the deadline to this Tuesday, January 14th, for anybody that's interested in that. It's a free workshop.
All right. At Advance?
okay, so they didn't have a meeting in December, but for some of us who went, there was a ledge breakfast the day after our meeting last month that was really well attended, and Whit and Henry were there, but it was very interactive, and I like to thank Jeff Kitchen, who hosted it. And then their meeting is tomorrow, but the only thing so I don't have a report from a meeting, but I do have, Jeff sent out to the superintendent their scholarship information. They give out 4 scholarships a year, and they're $1,500 a piece. So I'm going to hand this to Robin. She's going to give it to our high school guidance department. But please, seniors, look at this, see if this is something you can do. But $1,500, so that's it.
Great. District Safety Committee. Greg?
Okay, the District Safety Committee met this morning. Safety policies and procedures were discussed and reviewed. Future training topics and enhancement of the district school safety plan was also discussed.
Great.
Very good meeting.
So being on that District Safety Committee as well, I would like to say that it's nice to see that this district is far ahead of the game. They take the students and the teacher safety very seriously. I've been involved now for a while, and I travel elsewhere in the state and outside of the state, and we as a district are far ahead of the game compared to other districts as far as safety is concerned. So, all right, any board comments? We'll start with Greg. Anything? Melissa? Mr. Foote? Josiah? Cindy? Okay. I will comment on last night we had a retreat and we discussed the NASDAQ proposals. The superintendent did a fantastic job in the presentation of the two options that were still on the table, option 1 and option 5. Option 1, just to remind everybody, was to make one school K through 2, including pre-K, and the other one 3 through 5th, not closing a school, keeping the middle school the same and the high school the same. Not to go over the whole thing, but he highlighted the advantages of that, and the one disadvantage that we are looking at, which I don't think is a huge issue, but needs to be addressed and looked at further, which he is the bus routes and the times on the buses, and how that can be streamlined is a better word. Option 5 seemed to cost the town money. There seemed to be a lot more disadvantages to option 5. So at the end, the outcome of the meeting was to eliminate option 5. We decided as a board to eliminate option 5, which leaves option 1 on the table for further review. Once we have some more information, there will be another public hearing, which I hope is better attended than the last one, for parents and anybody to have input and questions before a decision is made. We need to make a decision as a board for budgetary reasons for the upcoming 2021 to 2022. We need to make a decision by March. So once we have that information, we will be posting that, and you're going to do that via the telephone this time?
Do telephone calls, Facebook,
anything that we can, so we can get people there so we can hear everybody's concerns. So teachers, parents, administrators, taxpayers, we want to hear everybody's concerns, and we want to inform them of what we are looking at before we make that final decision. All right. Item number 13 on the agenda, the next board meeting will be on February 12th, 2020 at 7 p.m. right here in the cafeteria at Terrible High School. Item number 14, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss a collective bargaining unit issue and inviting Dr. Semmel, Mr. Hendrickson, and Mr. Holtz, the principal of Terrible High School.
So moved.
Do I need a second? Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.